This is Krista. Welcome back to MadeToBeWhole. Stay tuned for our discussion on both the parable of the elephant and the elephant in the room.
MadeToBeWhole is intended for informational purposes only. It's not intended to replace the advice or care of a licensed healthcare professional. Participating in this podcast does not constitute a provider-patient relationship with Krista Michener, AHP Integrative Health, or any of the guests featured on MadeToBeWhole. Krista Michener, AHP Integrative Health, and any featured guests aren't responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from use of information obtained in this podcast or associated materials. Please consult a healthcare professional for any health-related concerns that you are experiencing.
Oh, welcome back to the podcast. There is a parable about the blind men and the elephant that I've thought a lot about recently and how it applies to health and a lot of things in our lives. I think it's really poignant and has a lot of layers of meaning. So it's an ancient parable, but it was set to a poem by the poet John Godfrey Saxe. The Poems of John Godfrey Saxe was published in 1873. And I read this version of it in a speech at Brigham Young University by Dieter Uchtdorf. So the beginning of the poem says, 6 men of Indostan to learning much inclined, who went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, that each by observation might satisfy his mind. So then the poem goes through, there are 6 of these travelers, and each of them, remember they're all blind, takes physically hold of a different part of the elephant and then describes what he perceives. He describes the elephant. So Uchtdorf says one of the men finds the elephant's leg and describes it as being round and rough like a tree. Another feels the tusk and describes the elephant as a spear. A third grabs the tail and insists that an elephant is like a rope. A fourth discovers the trunk and insists that the elephant is like a large snake. Each is describing truth. And because his truth comes from personal experience, each insists that he knows what he knows. And then the end of the poem is, and so these men of Indostan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong, though each was partly in the right, and all were in the wrong. So, obviously, those of us who have seen elephants think that's kind of silly. Obviously, an elephant is a complex being with many parts, and they are all distinct and different. But I think that all of us can probably find ourselves a bit in that parable and have probably been guilty of that. One of the things that I thought about immediately, the first kind of layer of this analogy, is just what it means to be chronically ill, generally or specifically what it's like to have POTS or EDS or Lyme disease or Babesia or Bartonella. Everybody has different experiences, and so you could take 10 people with Bartonella, for example, and they could each give you a description of what it feels like to have Bartonella, and each would be accurately describing their experience, but you might get 10 different tales. And some of it might be because they had different experiences, and some of it's because of what affected them the most or what they chose to focus on. If you take that parable a little farther, the same thing goes for healing. People will say, oh, when I got better, I did this. It was the only thing that worked. You have to do X. Or there's no way you're going to get better without X. And we cling desperately to those claims because we look for monocausality. And then we also just want simple, direct solutions. We want someone to just tell us what we have to do to get better. And we don't want it to be complex. And we don't want it to be expensive. And we don't want it to take time. But even the person who claims that rifampin is key to getting over Bartonella, and for some people that particular treatment can be critical. However, if you look at what that person's done, I would be very, very surprised if there are any, or at least many people who simply took rifampin and everything got better. There weren't other things that contributed to their healing, even if that was the big turning point. Just like there are many, many things that contribute to illness. So specific symptoms, once we have a chronic illness, it is tempting to attribute everything to that. You've heard me use the phrase before to not look at the world through lime-colored glasses, and to say anything once you have been diagnosed perhaps with chronic Lyme, to say everything that you have that's wrong is because of that, because that can lead you to delayed proper diagnosis and delayed treatment. I have a little bit of a personal example, which gets us to the elephant of the room. Those are you who are my patients know I had to take an emergency medical leave of absence. It's going to be a while. I know I look all right at this moment, but I am not all right all day, every day, and my good times are fairly inconsistent. So I can't really fairly try to jump in and take patients when I don't have the capacity to reliably do that. I will get better. It's just going to take time. But some of what we found through this recent crisis are symptoms that I had had for a long time that I attributed to the chronic infections. And I will say I do think they contributed to them and that they probably made them worse, but I missed something else big, that if I weren't totally focused on the suffering and the cause that I knew, I may have caught a little earlier. I may not have. I'm not crying over spilled milk, but I just want it to be instructive. Now, if we take our analogy even further as far as healing, I know that change is difficult, especially when you're in pain and suffering and you found someone you can trust. And I know it's been really difficult for some of our patients that I haven't been available. And I want you to take the opportunity to not be like the blind man holding on to one part of the elephant. There may be some things that are not going as well as they did or that you would like, but if you step back and look at all of what AHP and the rest of your support system has to offer, there's much, much more than my temporary absence. We have other excellent providers. I would not hire people that I did not trust. They are amazing. They have different life experience, different professional experience, and I also collaborate with them regularly so that they're up to date on your needs. If you have difficulty getting through or things aren't answered quickly enough, please don't take it out on the people who are there and helping. We really are trying. If there's anything that needs to address, if you were promised something that didn't happen, please just reach out with dignity and respect and let us know so that we can try to fix the situation. Our ultimate goal is your health and healing, and not just in the short term, but the long term. One of my concerns personally and professionally for a long time has been that a lot rests on me as far as patient care, staff support, business operations, plus I have a life and a family that I need to take care of, and I've worried for a long time that we didn't have the structure that would support an unexpected absence. Now, thankfully, I had been working on this, so there are some things in place, but what I'm wanting to focus on long term is to get everything in place so that no matter what happens to anyone in our office, we should all be allowed to have emergencies. None of us choose them, but we should all be allowed those, and that things go as smoothly as they can. I'd also encourage you to take the time to see if there are other resources that you can rely on. If you're really struggling emotionally and you've relied on us a lot for emotional support, which we're happy to provide, but maybe it would be a good time to reach out and find a counselor, find someone else who can help you work through other things that are impacting their healing. There's a lot more to healing than just what we provide or which things we prescribe or which tests we run. You know, your nervous system affects healing. Trauma affects healing. If you have trauma that you haven't addressed, maybe now would be a good time to try to step away and do that. There is no medicine in the world that can fix a broken heart. And so while we do work on physiological and environmental things that can be affecting our emotions, there is a lot that I think a lot of us probably have to work through. And we live in a busy world and we push off the things that pain us. But take the opportunity to do that. Take the opportunity to work on your diet. We have an amazing nutritionist, Kelly Janicek, at our office, who has a master's in nutrition and certifications in functional nutrition and does some fantastic things. She's available with counseling. If you don't have a counselor that you rely on, we do have a counselor now part-time in the office. We have our other providers who are ILADS trained, but also have other background and expertise, or maybe there's another provider who can help support part of your journey. One thing I want you to remember is that the person who has the greatest accountability for your healing is not me, it's you. And if I'm doing more for you than you're doing for you, you're not going to get better. So just step back, reassess. Maybe you're clinging to that tail and saying, how is this going to work? Krista's gone. How can this work? I've been seeing her forever. It's nothing that you can change or I can change. So I don't want you to spend your physical and emotional energy perseverating over something that you and I have no control over. I'm doing everything I can to get well as fast as I can to get back to taking care of my family and my patients. And I don't want your healing to be stalled either. We are more than happy to take recommendations, to take feedback, just with the caveat that it be done with kindness and respect. Unfortunately, we have had a few people call, swear at our staff, threaten our staff, scream at our staff. And often these are people that we've literally spent hours on the phone with trying to accommodate. Another thing that I've learned through this journey is to not take for granted the people who are there for me. And that includes my staff who has been loyal. None of them are perfect because we're all human and we're taking care of people who are really sick with really complex lives. But if you think that yelling or swearing at someone who's there to help me is going to help your case with me, you're sorely mistaken. It's not going to happen. So it's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be scared, but it's not okay to be a jerk. And that's just life. That's not just this situation. It's life. And so if that's your reaction to this, that's not going to serve you in life, not just in our practice. So this is going to be a very brief episode because I have limited capacity right now, but we will keep recording, keep putting out episodes. We're going to send out an email to our patients with a video talking a little more about some of the changes. But remember that you are in the driver's seat. Hold on to your faith, your family, your resources. Be creative and innovative. Reach out to your coach. Do it with kindness. And remember to have hope because you were made to be whole.
Have a podcast question or suggestion? Text or call us on the podcast info line at 330-439-0686. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to be notified when new episodes release. And remember, you were made to be whole.